I have two timers on my screen. This one here doesn't have any decimals, and I also can't move my player yet. As soon as we hit 0, it's going to say go. The timer above starts with decimals, and I can move my player around. Let's see how we can implement this functionality in Unity. To get started, we're going to go ahead and create a new C# script and name it timer. Next, we'll start by declaring some variables. We'll make a serialized field, private float, and we'll call it time remaining. And we'll also need to import TMP Pro and then make a reference to a text object. So text mesh pro GUI, and we'll just call that text. Then under update, we're going to go here and say if time remaining is less than 0, we are just going to return. And otherwise, we are going to say time remaining minus equals time dot delta time. And finally, we're going to make a method here, and we're going to call it private void update text. And then we're just going to call that from here, update text. And we are going to say text.text is equal to time remaining dot toString. To make the timer functional, technically that's all we really have to do, but right now it's a bit like this hourglass. It's functional, but it's really only good at accomplishing one specific task in particular. Let's hook this timer up in Unity. We'll do so by creating a new UI object and naming it timer text. It's text mesh pro. We'll give it a default text of 000. We'll anchor it to the top of the screen with an offset of -50, and then we'll just center align it. Finally, we'll attach the timer script onto it and give it a default value of, say, 10 seconds. Oh, and of course, we should also attach the text to it. Let's hit play and see if that works. So there we go. It's functional, but it's not a very good timer. It has a lot of decimal places, and as soon as we hit 0, it's going to just keep going into a weird negative number and stop. So it's a very rough draft. Let's fix these two issues. To fix the weird negative numbers, we could just go here and say if time remaining is less than 0, time remaining equals 0. Next, we can add an optional argument in the toString, and we can say something like F0, which means that we should not show any decimal places. We should show 0 decimal places. But we can take this a step further and go up here and say serialized field private int decimals. And then we can go here and say $, delete the number 0, open two squiggly brackets, and say decimals. This will give us the option in Unity to specify how many decimal places we want. Let's try it out. You can see I have 0 decimals here. If I hit play, we're going to see it indeed counts down without any decimals. And even cooler, if I can go here, I can just update it, say 2, 3, and it automatically updates to the number of decimal places that I specify. Better, but we can still do more. Let's make it so a timer appears in the center of the screen before the game begins that counts down 3, 2, 1, go. Only after it says go should this timer up here start. And also, let's make it so the player can't move while the countdown timer is starting. So once the game officially starts, the top timer will start and the player should be able to move. Two timers, each with similar functionality, yet both of them are meant to behave a little bit differently. They both have different outcomes. When we have two objects that have similarities but also their own unique characteristics, there is an object-oriented programming concept for that. We call it inheritance. If you're unfamiliar with the topic of inheritance, try thinking about it like a vehicle. You have different types of vehicles: buses, boats, and airplanes. Each of these are vehicles and they have similar properties and characteristics, things like acceleration and speed, but they also have their own unique properties. For instance, a car can drive on land, a boat floats on the water, and a plane flies through the air. Each of these are vehicles, but not all vehicles are cars, not all vehicles are boats, and not all vehicles are planes. Unless it's the Magic School Bus. That shit can do anything. Or the TARDIS. Or a UAP. Let's go ahead and convert this timer class to a class we can use with inheritance. To start, we're going to type the word abstract before class, signifying that this is not a script that we want to attach directly onto our game objects. Instead, we're going to use it as a base to inherit from. Next, we're going to change these private to protected, which just means that it will be accessible to any methods that inherit from the timer class. Let's also go ahead and make a new Boolean variable, and we'll make it protected, and we'll call it isCountingDown. And finally, over here where it says if time remaining is less than 0, we're just going to say if isCountingDown, and actually we want to make this the negative, then we're going to return. The idea here is we want one of the timers to start right as soon as the scene loads, but the other one is only going to start when a certain condition is met. This is logic we may want to apply to additional timers, so it makes sense to include it here. Finally, let's go over here and we can say if time remaining equals 0, and we know it will get to eventually be exactly 0 because of the line above, we can call on a new method, and we will make this a protected abstract void timer ended. And now we're just going to call this and say timer ended. An abstract void is a little bit different than a regular void, meaning that it's only going to have its functionality added in the inherited classes. But here in the parent base class, we're just creating the method, and it won't have any logic implemented at this level. And actually, let's just clean this little bit of logic up right here too. We don't need to have two if statements for this, and there is the chance that the time remaining could minus itself exactly to 0. Not super likely, but it could happen. So let's just say if time remaining is less or equal to 0, we'll cut and paste this line into here, and then we can just get rid of this first if statement. So we'll just say if it's less or equal to 0, make it exactly equal to 0, and end the timer. Now, just to demonstrate, this timer over here is no longer going to work. In fact, if I hit play, we can see that nothing happens. So what we need, and this is because we have turned it into an abstract class. So we actually need to remove this component, and we need to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this GameTimer. We're going to go into GameTimer, and we're going to delete the word monobehavior, and we're just going to write timer. Now, immediately, this gets a red squiggly underneath it, and this is because timer is using an abstract void. So it needs this method to be implemented in the inherited class in order for it to be functional. So if I'm using Visual Studio Code, so if I just hover over here and hit Control period, I can say implement abstract class, and then I can just delete this line here. We don't need it. And here is where I could put my logic for the timer. I'm also just going to delete these methods, save, and go back to Unity. I'm going to select my timer text, go into the inspector, and we're just going to drag this game timer onto here. We're going to get the same variables because they're protected, so we're just going to set those back up. Of course, we also need to check this Boolean is counting down because that's our new logic here, and we're going to hit play. And just like that, our game timer script works just as well as the other one did. We can add decimal places and do whatever we want with it. Of course, we don't want this timer to start right away, so I'm going to uncheck this box. And I also do want this one to have a couple of decimal places, so we'll put that in there. Next, I'm going to rename this to the game timer. I'm going to duplicate it and rename this duplication to be countdown timer. I'm going to go into its properties, anchor this one to the center of the screen. We are going to remove the game timer script. I'm going to increase the font size here, say 72, give it a slightly different color, maybe a nice orange. And now we are going to create another new C# script, and we're going to call this one countdown timer. I'm going to go inside the countdown timer, replace monobehavior with timer, and we're going to add that abstract void right there, just like that. And I'll delete start and update. We'll go back. And on the countdown timer object, I'm now going to just add that script to it, countdown timer. And I'm going to change its settings. We're going to give it 3 seconds and 0 decimal places, and it is going to start immediately. Let's try that out. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, and now we need to add some custom logic so that when it hits 0, it says go, and this timer starts. Inside my countdown timer class, I can already access the text object and just say text.text equals go. Because this is now a protected variable being inherited from timer, I can just access it directly inside the countdown timer class, and this should update it to say go whenever the timer ends. I've also created another C# script called actions. I'm going to turn this into a public static class and delete its inheritance from mono behavior, as well as these. I'm going to add the using system namespace, and then I'm going to make a public static action. I'm going to call it on game started. And if you're unfamiliar with actions, this is a subject for a whole other video, but they are a great way to subscribe and unsubscribe from different events within Unity. So just follow along for now. But what we're going to do here is we are going to say actions.onGameStarted.invoke, and I'm going to put a question mark here just in case nothing is listening for this. Now we're going to go into the game timer, and we are going to go here, and we're going to make a private on enable and a private on disable. And we are going to say actions.onGameStarted plus equals start timer. I'm going to hit control period and create this method here, which is called start timer. And then when we subscribe to an event, we also have to unsubscribe. So I'm going to copy and paste that here. I'm just going to move this method up because I like my on enables and on disables to be together. And then we are going to say, what was the name of the variable? Is counting down equals true. So basically, as soon as this timer ends, we are going to mention that the game has started, and then we are going to start the game timer. So I can hit play and give that a test. And 3, 2, 1, and there we go. This starts. Of course, I can also still move the player around, and the 0 just persists on the screen, so let's go fix that. So here is the beautiful thing about inheritance. We can just add our own custom logic to the countdown timer, and it's not going to interfere with the timer class. So we're going to just say private void disappear text, and then we're just going to invoke that method. We'll just say invoke name of disappear text, and we can invoke it after 1 second. Am I not spelling that correctly? Let's just copy paste it. There we go. And we can just say text.gameObject.setActive is false. Now, just to save some time, I'll just show you what I've done. I've gone into my player movement script. I've used that same action to invoke a method when the game starts, and in here I just set a variable can move to be true, and if we cannot move, then we're returning. I have a player jump script, and I'm doing something similar over here, just so you can take a quick look. We can go back to Unity and test this out. 3, 2, 1, I can't move. And there we go. Now I can move and jump. We could also make it so that when this timer runs out, then we could basically have it say game over, and then the game would stop and reset. We would just handle that in the countdown timer script, similar to the game timer. We could just handle whatever logic we wanted in there, and we could do it separately. So a couple of bugs to fix that I just noticed. Number one, the text is never actually saying go. And that has to do with the order of execution, because we're calling timer ended, and then we're immediately calling update text and setting it to whatever the number is in the timer, so it's just getting overwritten. In this case, we can also change this to a protected virtual void, which is going to give us the ability to override the update text method in our inherited class. But unlike this abstract void, this is totally optional to do, whereas an abstract void means it is required to add in an inherited class. So if we go back to the countdown timer, we can now say protected override void, and it pops up immediately saying update text. And now it's using the base keyword, which basically just says to implement whatever logic is in the parent class. So basically do this line first and then do whatever custom logic we want to add. So in here, I'm going to say if text.text equals 0, we are just going to say text.text equals go. And we can delete that from over here because it's not doing anything. And then in the timer, I'm also going to go back here, and when the timer does end, I'm also just going to say is counting down equals to false to make sure that that doesn't even attempt to run anymore. Let's go back and test. And here we go. We're going to see 3, 2, 1, go. And then our timer starts properly and we can move. So there you have it. That's how we can create a very simple, practical, functional timer in Unity. There is one outstanding issue. What if we want to have a very big number, say 1,000 seconds or 5 minutes, and you don't really want to have to do that conversion in your head? How can we add that functionality to the timer so it can just give us a countdown of, say, 5M and then the seconds remaining? We'll handle that in a second part to this video, as this one is getting a little long already. But I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, please let us know down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.